I made a decision that shocked nearly everyone who knew me. I stopped going out, not because I was ill, not because I was afraid, but because for the first time in 8 decades, I chose to listen to what my own soul was asking for, and it asked for silence. If you are over 70 and you have felt that same quiet pull toward home, toward stillness, toward a slower and more intentional life, stay with me, because what I am about to share changed everything for me, and I believe it will speak directly to your heart. You know, there was a time when I measured the fullness of my life by how packed my days were. If every hour was accounted for, if there was always somewhere to be or someone waiting on me, I felt like I was doing it right. I felt useful. I felt present. And for many, many years, that was enough. But somewhere in my 80s, something shifted, quietly, without warning, the way the most important changes always seem to happen. I began to notice that the world outside my door no longer called to me the way it once did. And my first instinct, I will be honest with you, was to fight that feeling. I told myself I needed to stay busy. I told myself that slowing down was something to be afraid of. But here is what I have come to understand after all these years of living. What I once mistook for shrinking was actually something far more valuable. It was refining. My world was not getting smaller. It was getting truer. All the noise, all the rushing, all the obligations I had carried for decades, they began to fall away, one by one, like layers that no longer belonged to me. And what remained underneath was something I had not seen clearly in a very long time. It was myself, the real version, unhurried, unbothered, finally at home in my own skin. There is a kind of wisdom that only comes when you stop filling every silence, when you allow the day to unfold without forcing it somewhere. The women and men who sit still at this age are not defeated by life. They are not giving up. They are doing something that takes far more courage than staying busy ever did. They are choosing what is real over what simply looks impressive. They are trading performance for peace. And I want you to hear this clearly. That is not a loss. That is the most honest and courageous exchange you will ever make. Your world is not shrinking. It is finally becoming yours. If these words are reaching your heart today, I want to ask you for one simple thing before we continue. Subscribe to this channel, Wisdom of Age. Every week I sit down and speak honestly about what this stage of life truly feels like. There is something nobody really prepares you for as you get older, and it is not the aches or the slower mornings, or even the way time seems to move differently than it used to. What catches you off guard, truly off guard, is the moment you realize that your energy is no longer something you can spend without thinking. For most of my life, I gave it away freely, to my family, to my work, to neighbors, to obligations that sometimes did not even deserve it. I woke up and I gave and I kept giving, and somehow there was always a little more to give the next day. That was the rhythm I knew. That was the rhythm I trusted. But the body, in its quiet and patient wisdom, eventually tells you the truth. It does not shout. It does not demand. It simply begins to show you, gently and persistently, that something has changed. An outing that once felt easy now leaves you needing an entire afternoon to recover. A conversation that goes on a little too long drains something out of you that does not come back quickly. At first, I felt frustrated by that. I thought something was wrong with me. I wondered if I was becoming less than I used to be. But I was not becoming less. I was becoming wiser, because what I was learning, slowly and surely, was the difference between spending energy and investing it. When you are young, you spend without counting. But at this stage of life, you begin to see that every single thing you give your attention to carries a cost. Some things give something beautiful back. A quiet morning, a genuine conversation with someone you love, a simple meal prepared without rush. These things restore you. But many other things, the unnecessary obligations, the gatherings you attend out of guilt, the noise you absorb simply because you feel you should, these quietly take more than they ever return. Learning to see that difference clearly is not weakness. It is the most intelligent and loving thing you will ever do for yourself. I want to talk about something that I think gets misunderstood more than almost anything else when it comes to this stage of life, and that is the difference between being alone and feeling lonely, because the world tends to treat those two things as if they are the same. If you are spending more time at home, if you are turning down invitations, if you are choosing quiet evenings over crowded gatherings, people around you begin to worry. They check in with a certain look in their eyes. They ask if you are doing all right in a way that tells you they are not entirely sure you are. And I understand where that concern comes from. It comes from love, most of the time. But it also comes from a misunderstanding that I wish more people could see clearly. Loneliness is an ache. It is a hollow feeling that sits in your chest and reminds you that something is missing. It is the sense of being disconnected from the world, even when you are standing right in the middle of it. I have felt that feeling before in my life, and I would not wish it on anyone. But solitude, chosen, intentional, peaceful solitude, is something else entirely. It does not feel empty. It feels complete. It feels like finally arriving somewhere you did not even know you had been trying to reach. When I began spending more of my days quietly at home, something unexpected happened. The noise in my own mind began to settle, not all at once, but gradually, the way a snow globe clears after you set it down and stop shaking it. And in that stillness, I began to hear something I had not heard clearly in years, my own voice. Not the voice that responded to other people's needs, not the voice that managed and organized and kept everything running, but the deeper voice, the one that had been waiting patiently underneath all the busyness for someone to finally stop and listen. And after all these years, that voice turned out to be the finest company I have ever kept. Now I want to share something with you that genuinely surprised me, something I did not expect when I began living more quietly at home. And honestly, something I am not sure I would have believed if someone had told me about it before I experienced it myself. Because when most people think about slowing down at this age, they think about what they might be giving up, the activity, the movement, the sense of being part of things. What they do not think about, what I certainly did not think about, is what the body begins to quietly gain when you finally stop pushing it past what it is asking for. I had carried tension in my body for so long that I had stopped noticing it was there. It had become part of me, like an old coat I had worn so many years I forgot I had it on. The tightness across my shoulders, the shallow breathing I did not even realize was shallow. The way I moved through a day with a kind of low, constant urgency running underneath everything, even the moments that were supposed to be restful. I thought that was simply how life felt. I thought that was just what getting older meant. But when my days began to slow down, when the rhythm of my home became my primary environment, instead of something I rushed back to between obligations, my body began responding in ways I had not anticipated. Sleep, which had been fragile and restless for years, began to deepen. I would wake up feeling something I can only describe as settled, not just rested, but genuinely settled, as though something inside me had finally been given permission to stop bracing for whatever came next. The tightness in my shoulders began to soften. My breathing slowed without me trying to slow it. Even the way I moved through my own home changed, less hurried, more natural, more like someone who actually belonged in the moment she was standing in. The body always knows when it is finally safe, and peace, it turns out, is the most powerful medicine it has ever been offered. I want to speak very honestly with you about something that took me longer to work through than I would like to admit. Because even after I had begun to understand the value of stillness, even after I had started to feel the difference that a quieter life was making in my body and my mind, there was still a voice inside me that would not completely go quiet. And that voice had one thing to say, over and over again, in the background of all those peaceful mornings and gentle afternoons. It said, "You should be doing more." It asked whether I was being lazy. It wondered what people thought when they heard I had stayed home again. It carried a word I think many of us at this age know all too well, and that word was guilt. Guilt is a peculiar thing. It does not always come from doing something wrong. Sometimes it comes from decades of conditioning that told you your value was tied directly to your output, to how much you produced, how often you showed up, how busy you remained. I grew up in a time when rest was something you earned at the end of a long day, not something you were simply allowed to choose. And that belief had roots in me that went very, very deep. Even when my body was asking for gentleness, even when my mind was craving quiet, that old conditioning would rise up and make me feel as though I was failing some invisible standard that nobody had ever actually asked me to meet. But here is the truth that I had to learn, and that I want to offer to you as plainly as I possibly can. You have already done the work. Not some of it, not most of it, all of it. You have shown up for others through seasons that would have broken someone who had not been as strong as you. You have carried responsibilities, absorbed difficulties, and kept going long past the point when stopping would have been entirely forgivable. Rest is not something you earn at this point in life. It is something you have already earned 1,000 times over. Here's the expanded key point 6, written as Helen's spoken voice, seamless, warm, and powerful. And now I want to leave you with something that I believe, with everything in me, is the most important shift that happens when you finally allow yourself to live at this gentler pace. Because there comes a point, somewhere in the middle of all that stillness, somewhere between the quiet mornings and the unhurried afternoons, where something inside you begins to see the world around you differently. The things you once rushed past without a second thought begin to reveal themselves in a way they never could when you were always moving too fast to truly notice them. And what you discover when you finally stop long enough to look is that the moments you had been treating as ordinary were never ordinary at all. I think about my mornings now and what they have become, the way the light comes through my kitchen window at a particular angle and rests on the table in a way that is different every single day, the warmth of a cup held in both hands when the air in the house is still cool, the sound of birds outside that I genuinely never heard before because I was always already thinking about the next thing I needed to do. These are not grand moments. They do not look impressive from the outside. Nobody would write about them, or photograph them, or hold them up as examples of a life being lived well. And yet they carry something inside them that I spent most of my life chasing in far bigger and far louder places. They carry a sense of being exactly where you are supposed to be. I used to believe that meaning lived out there somewhere, in achievements, in gatherings, in keeping up with a world that was always moving forward. But meaning, real meaning, does not live out there. It lives in the texture of an ordinary Tuesday morning. It lives in the familiar sounds of your own home settling around you. It lives in the simple and profound fact that you are here, breathing, present, and at peace with the life that surrounds you. The most meaningful moments of your life are not ahead of you. They are already here, waiting quietly for you to notice them. I am Helen Carter. I am 83 years old, and I want to leave you with this. The peace you are looking for is not somewhere out there waiting to be found. It is already inside you, and it has been waiting patiently while you were busy with everything else. Slow down. Go home. Sit in your favorite chair and breathe. You do not need to go anywhere to matter. You do not need to fill every hour to be whole. You have already lived enough, given enough, and loved enough to earn every quiet moment that remains. Honor them. They are yours. And I will see you again next time, right here on Wisdom of Age.